Hi everyone, today's video is a project that's very close to my heart. I'd like you to meet my father Graham. He passed away on April the 3rd, 2023 from multiple sclerosis. And before he died, he gave me a list of places that were special to him. Places from when he grew up and places that he wanted to visit one last time. Unfortunately, he couldn't do so because of the illness. So I planned to photograph these places for him whilst I was in the UK. But unfortunately, my wife had a medical emergency. She suffered a late-stage miscarriage and I had to fly back to the Philippines to be with her. And so I wasn't able to complete this project before my dad died, sadly, 3 weeks later. Now I plan to fulfill that promise, and this video marks the start of that journey. In this video, I'll be sharing how I'm planning the project, everything from setting constraints to planning shoots at each location. Hopefully, you'll find some value in this video and it might even inspire you to start your own project. So let's dive right in and see how I'm planning this project. So for me, every documentary project needs a defining purpose. What is the point? Why am I making this project? The purpose is to capture the places that my father thought were important to him, the places where he grew up, the places that formed him and shaped him in his early life. So he was born in Plymouth, down in Devon, and he spent a lot of his time down in that part of the world. You know, he was always talking about trips that he went on to Cornwall, to the coast, to the beaches. And he told me stories about these places and what he did there and the adventures he had with his friends. And I want to go there and document them and put together a series of images that will capture some of the feeling and the places and the stories that he told me. So I think that every documentary project needs to have that kind of purpose. What do you want to get out of the project? What's the point? Why are you doing it? And that point, that purpose provides the motivation. This project is going to be a fairly long-term one. It's going to be probably filmed over the period of a year or more. As you know, if you watched my previous videos, I spend a large part of my year in the Philippines. And so I only have a certain amount of time in the UK each year to fulfill this project. And I'm gonna now go through and show you how I'm going about planning it. And maybe some of you have planned more projects than me, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. Maybe you can give me some tips, some advice. I'm asking myself several questions. What do I want to capture? So what kind of images do I want to capture? What kind of scenes do I want to capture? And how do I want to capture them? And what's the focus? What's the focus of this project? What does it all revolve around? So in my case, obviously it's my dad. And I want to capture those places almost to preserve them. And it's also about honoring that promise that I gave to him that I would create lots of photographs of the areas that he wanted to visit again, but he couldn't. And so even though that element now is gone and I can't, so even though I'm not going to be able to hand him those prints and let him see those places again, I feel like I still want to fulfill the project. I still want to do it. I feel like it's still a worthy thing to do and an important thing to do. And that's why I'm doing it. And I don't think you can get much stronger motivation than that. But I think for any project, you need to find that sort of purpose and meaning to help you push through when you encounter difficulties. So again, I'm asking, why is this story important? What's the meaning in it? Who will it benefit? And why do you want to tell the story? And that will again help with motivation. I don't think any project can be done very, very quickly. I think it takes time. And so you need that overarching motivation and purpose to drive you forward. And then finally, it's, you know, what impact do you want the project to have? Do you want it just simply to tell the story? Do you want it to benefit someone? Do you want it to create memories? There are so many different impacts that a project like mine could have, or a project that's, you know, perhaps not so personal, but it's personal for someone. You know, most projects are probably personal for someone, whether it's the characters within the story that you're telling, or whether it's personal for you because it's a cause that you care about. But you need to sort of look at it. For me, I want to look at it and think, what do I want the outcome to be? What impact do I want it to have? I don't think that you can create a project and have it, you know, be very broad. If I'm looking at this project that I'm doing now, basically he gave me a list of places in Devon and Cornwall that he would love to see again, places that he held dear in his heart, that he had memories at. And that's a pretty broad list, really. You know, there are 20, 30, 40 places. And so if I was just gonna go down there and say, well, I'll just photograph them in any way I want, then it's too broad. You can't get a sense of focus. I can't think, okay, well, how do I go about this? Because maybe I'm shooting wide angle landscapes, maybe I'm shooting intimate portraits of the people there. And mixing it all together, the project's gonna be an absolute mess, to be honest. It's gonna be all over the place. So I wanted to define or create some creative constraints that would allow me to narrow down my focus and feel like it's not gonna be an overwhelming job to try and work through this project. I've narrowed down a bunch of creative constraints that will allow me to just focus in on what I really want to shoot and what I want to get out of it. And I'm going to go through those constraints now. One of the first constraints was, and this kind of goes back to my last video, is I just want to keep my kit simple. I want to be able to travel down there and have a lightweight kit and get the shots without having to constantly think about, you know, what lens am I using, which camera am I using. And so I will shoot this project on the Fuji X100VI with its 35mm equivalent focal length, and I will also shoot it on the X-T5 with a 35mm f2, and that will give me a 35 and a 50mm equivalent focal length, which I think I can shoot everything on. Now I may miss out on some shots, but I think generally having that constraint is going to be more beneficial than if I just take a whole bunch of lenses with me and end up running around not knowing what to shoot. I'm also going to shoot this in one film simulation mode, so with one color look, and I think that will give the project a cohesive look, not only with shooting everything with only 2 focal lengths, but also with having a certain look to the images. So I'm going to shoot it in classic chrome, and the reason for that is that is giving a kind of look of past documentary type photographers, and I want to make this more of a documentary style project. I don't want to have over stylized images. Then I have a nice twist at the end of this, which I'm not going to let you in on now, but it's a really personal touch, and it will just add the finishing touches to this series of photos that I'm going to try and create on behalf of my father. I'm going to leave that as a surprise at the end, but I think it will be quite poignant. When I'm thinking about putting these constraints in place, I'm doing so to bring the whole series of photographs that I'm going to make, give them a similar look. It works together as a series of images rather than a bunch of individual images. So we'll get into actually how I'm planning this. So there's a few things that I use. I'm on my iPad and I'm trying to keep things all on here so I have everything in one location. On there, I'm using Google Maps, which is a brilliant tool and I'm sure you're all aware of. And I'm going in and I'm going through the list of places that he gave me. And so I can pick out and prioritize those places. And then I can search them in Google Maps. A lot of these locations I haven't been to. And so I'm going to use Google Maps to go in and get a rough search of the places. And then from there, I will use Street View to look around and perhaps just give me a general idea of what they look like, what types of shots I can get from there. And also pick out any particular locations that I think, okay, well, that might work. And then on the Google Maps app itself, I'm then making notes. So I will pin in places and locations, and then I will make notes on those locations. From Google Maps, I will then switch to PhotoPills, and I'll just plan the time of day to shoot it. So I will go in and I'll put the pin down on the locations, and I'll see whether it looks like it's going to be a decent shot at sunrise or sunset. It will give me the times of sunrise and sunset. And then from there, I can then add those times and put that into my Google Notes so that I have the location, the memory, and also the best time of day to shoot. And so I'm trying to be as efficient as I can be. Hopefully that will save me time when I'm down there, and it will mean I can be more efficient and get more done. So once I've gone into PhotoPills and I've pulled the sunrise, sunset times out, and I've added it to my Google Maps, and I've added it to the notes in Google Maps, I'm also then gonna quickly check the tides, and not particularly for this next bunch of shots. In the future, I'll be doing coastal shots, and for those shots, I will check the tide timetables. When I'm doing this project, I want to think of the final outcome. What do I want to do with it? I touched on it earlier that I want it to honor, you know, the promise I made to my dad, but I actually want a specific outcome. What do I want to actually do with the images? And so for me on this, because it's a personal project, I'm going to create a zine at the end of it. For those of you who don't know, it's a zine is like a short photo book, and then I shall give it out to family members. And then I'm also going to print some of these images at the end. Once they're completed and I'm back in the Philippines, I have a printer over there, and I'll go through and I'll print them off myself because I want to keep it personal and I want to oversee the quality of the prints. And so I think that would be a really nice way to finish off the project with some prints that I can hang in my home and that I can give to others, and that will just enable me to feel proud of the project, feel proud of my dad and where he grew up, and to have that little memento and that little reminder on my walls of some beautiful photos and some cherished memories. So I want to talk about what you can expect from future videos. But before I do that, I really want to take a minute just to thank everyone who watched my last video on gas. I had some great advice from some of you, some brilliant comments, some that made me laugh, some that were quite thoughtful. And either way, if you took the time to comment, then I really appreciate it. It was pretty overwhelming. And just those comments have been really uplifting. So I really do want to say a serious and heartfelt thank you to all of you who subscribed, who commented, who liked, and just the general positive attitude around the video. I really do appreciate it, and I actually made the effort to go through and reply to every single comment, and I'll try and do that in the future as well. For those of you who are interested in how I'm getting rid of my gear and what I'm keeping, I'll do a future video on that, so that will be upcoming. I'll also be doing behind the scenes on this project this week. So that will probably be next week's video, will be a behind the scenes video. So yeah, I've rabbited on for long enough now. Really appreciate you watching. I'm gonna stop banging this cup because it's gonna really knacker up my audio. And hopefully I'll see you on the next one.